Good evening. The German Chancellor Olaf Schultz is in Washington tonight, warning of the dangers of a Russian victory in Ukraine if allies don't quickly step up their military support. Joe Biden does not need persuading. But there's no progress on a foreign aid bill. The House Speaker says he won't even put it on the floor. Wrapped up in that package is aid for Israel. But last night, the president changed his position on the scale of the offensive in Gaza and has made it clear he does not support the impending assault on Rafah, now home to over 1.5 million Palestinians.
I'm of the view, as you know, that the conduct of the response in Gaza, in the Gaza Strip, has been over the top.
8 months out from the election, Joe Biden would dearly love a ceasefire in the Middle East, and last night signed a memorandum stipulating that those who receive American aid must comply with international humanitarian law. But the Middle East is the least of his problems right now. The White House is still on damage control following the release of Special Counsel Robert Hur's report into the handling of classified documents. It portrayed the president as feeble and forgetful. And in the last hour, the administration has mounted an angry rebuttal of the council's, quotes, gratuitous comments.
The report lays out example after example of how the president did not willfully take classified documents. The report lays out how the president did not share classified documents with anyone. The report lays out how the president did not knowingly share classified information with anyone. On page 2, which I know you all read, the report argues that President willfully retained materials. But buried way later on page 215, the report says, and I quote, "There is in fact a shortage of evidence on these points." 200 pages later. Put simply, this case is closed because the facts and the evidence don't support the theories here.
Our correspondent Tom Bateman is following all the events at the White House for us this evening. That was a pretty fierce response from the administration tonight, Tom. I suppose it has to be, given the obvious damage it's caused. What's your sense 24 hours on of how that story is unfolding?
It's really bad news for President Biden because although there was the legal exoneration overall, although it was interesting, Ian Sams there, the special assistant to the president, going through even that and saying that they believe there were things just simply factually wrong, the wrong emphasis put on things in the report and contradictions between what the report set out in the first few pages and then what it said much, much further down. They're basically in a position that they had always wanted to avoid, where this issue of President Biden's age and his acuity, his ability to perform the functions of his office, is once again back in the spotlight. So, as I say, that political exoneration, but now a legal exoneration rather, but a sort of political hand grenade tossed right in the beginning of this election year that we know is already going to be very tumultuous, where we expect now those attacks will continue. Certainly Republicans have wasted no time in pouncing on all of this. And although you have now senior Democrats right up to the vice president attacking really both the factual basis of what was said in this report and the integrity of Robert Hur, the special counsel, it's a pretty tall order for them, I think, to sort of push all this back, because we know that voters do have concerns about his age. The polling suggests that, and certainly Republicans are going to exploit it even further. That said, it may be very much sort of already baked in to the way people are intending to vote in what is, of course, an extremely polarised environment.
We're waiting for pictures, Tom, of Olaf Schultz, who's arriving imminently at the White House. There will always be focus on a visit like that, as well there should be, because they stand so closely on the matters at hand, Ukraine and the Middle East. But I guess for President Biden, he will be aware that the focus is not so much on the crises at hand, but on the way he reacts and his responses to the questions he's asked.
That's true. And, some of the attacks on him today have focused on this issue of national security. We've had now 3 times in a week where President Biden has, misspoken or slipped up on the names or his recollections of who foreign leaders are. Of course, all of that is now in the background. But on the issue of substance here, you're absolutely right to say, you have this significant crisis over security now raging in two parts of the world. And these have all become interlinked. And Chancellor Schultz's visit to Washington sort of encapsulates this, because what the White House, the administration, is desperate to do is to get the funding secured, military funding secured for Ukraine. But at the same time, they're faced with the Republican repeated attempts to dismantle this. They're failing so far to get it through Congress. And they're basically saying if the weapon supply dries up to Ukraine from the US, you've got a major crisis on your hand that sort of opens the door to Vladimir Putin. And Olaf Schultz is saying exactly that. That's what he's come to Washington to say, that in writing in a Wall Street Journal editorial yesterday, he said that this threatens the entire liberal global order. He said if this funding is not put back in the system.